Welcome to another edition of the Wrestling Heroes and Insiders podcast, aka The Whip Show. You know what it is. I am Deshaun Whip Dog Whipple, and I am here with my partner,
Devastating Daryl Pace.
Devastating Daryl Pace, man. What's going on, bro?
Oh, man, it's going good. Excited again. Another great week, man. They just keep getting better and better.
For sure, man. We done have some amazing guests each and every week, but this week is going to be kind of powerful. You understand? Because we got somebody that's going to be in the building tonight. This young man is an Emmy award-winning journalist. He also runs a very majestic place called CarnyLand. He is the voice of the National Wrestling Alliance. Can you guys give it up to the voice of NWA Powerrr, Joe Galli? How you doing today, man?
I'm just going to give myself a little round of applause. I'll just do it. Like, we got a nice crowd here. Like, all right, it's me. Like, just the golf clap. Like, I don't think I deserve the roaring applause, but just a little, yay, you made the birdie. Good.
That was great. There's no fans world. So you brought your own fans.
I did. They're around. My two cats are around. They'll probably make a cameo appearance.
Well, Joe Galli, once again, thank you for coming on the show, man. I got to ask you, how are you hanging in there with everything going on with this pandemic right now?
You know, I got to say I'm probably one of the more fortunate folks out there with my job in broadcast journalism. Not a lot's changed for me. As a matter of fact, I'm probably working more than I ever have before. And it's a day-to-day grind. I think the past 2 weeks, we've started to kind of get back into traditional local news where not every single story is a coronavirus story. So it's starting to kind of get those things, and you're getting that sense of normalcy, and you're starting to see different things depending if you watch your local news or not, that I think things are just starting to change and evolve. And so over the past few weeks, you know, there's been some things that obviously I've missed out on. There's just like everybody else, when I'm not out in the field working or going into city council meetings or emergency management meetings and all these other sort of things, I'm stuck at home like everybody else. You know, my mixed martial arts training was put on hold. Everybody else's gym was closed. The gym here at the apartment complex is closed. So you had to bring out, you know, the perfect push-ups from back in the day. I had to bring those out of storage. I had to buy a pull-up bar for the door frame just so you could keep moving and keep being active. And I think that that's really helped try to, like, keep me sane. And then on top of that, you know, working with William Corgan and David Lagana, making all this stuff for CarnyLand. I mean, CarnyLand, from the concept that it was this very loose idea of what it could be and then to what it's turned into, the evolution is insane as to what it's come about. And a lot of that has to go with the good talent of all the folks that are being involved with that. When you have Allison Kay doing the promo class and hitting it out of the park with that, we got Eli Drake, like, going off the chain, getting all kinds of microphones, having his own show where he talks for an hour. You got Tim Storm doing his classroom lessons, which I hope that we keep doing that sort of stuff with all these different skits that we have and all these other ones that you haven't seen yet. The first version of CarnyLand, nobody really knows this. The first version that they were ready was 90 minutes long. And so there was so much that was taken out of that. And now we still have a lot of that content in our back pocket. And it's a lot of stuff that people will start to see in the coming weeks, especially for the folks that have come on board and gone through Patreon and been patrons of CarnyLand, where they're a visitor or they're a citizen, or if they want to, you know, spend some big bucks, but you get a lot of content out of it, you become a council member. And now the big announcement is we're going to have a mayor. We're going to have a mayor of CarnyLand. I don't want that responsibility. I'm not running. My hat is not in the race. You know what? I'm sure I could get the votes. I'm sure I could, but I'm going to leave that to some other folks that really want it, that really want to represent that crazy universe that we've created, that's CarnyLand.
For sure, man. And you guys got some great stuff going on in CarnyLand. And if you guys haven't yet, make sure you watch everything on the NWA YouTube channel. I'm talking about what's causing all this, a great show. The Eli Drake show, is another great show. Everything going on, Allison Kay's work, and my boy, the outlandish Zicky Dice. Awesome. Everything on there is awesome, man. So
yeah, I love Zicky. Yeah, for sure. Zicky's he is outlandish. All of his stuff is great.
The boy's amazing. But I gotta ask you this: with you being a broadcast journalist by day, what made you slide into the pro wrestling business in the first place?
I was doing pro wrestling well before I was in the journalism industry. So this was over a decade ago at this point. And I was a worker. I was a worker in the Los Angeles area, working outlaw mud shows, as my former commentator would call them. And I wasn't a particularly good worker. I had a very risque sort of sexual gimmick that's very similar to what Joey Ryan is doing now. Like, Joey Ryan is a much better version of what I was trying to do back in the day. And at the same time, I was going to college and I was attending classes at California State University, Northridge, go Matadors. And I got a degree in journalism, and I actually had no plans on actually using it. Like, I just kind of got it to kind of get the degree. Like, I just wanted to graduate. I didn't really have aspirations to get into that business, but there was a consultant working for the NBC station in Toledo, Ohio, and they were looking for an off-the-wall, wacky, crazy sort of reporter for their morning show. And my demo reel, the first shot is me standing in the ring, and then I get a DVD from Brawlin' Bo Cooper as part of like this fake news stand-up that I did. And so they saw it and they loved me and I got the job. And the best part about it was that the call letters for that station are WNWO. So that was just too sweet for me, right? How perfect is that? And so I slid from doing pro wrestling for a number of years in the ring. And then I went and I wrestled a little bit, but not a whole lot in Ohio, Michigan. And then a little later on in Pennsylvania, I kind of worked the circuit, but it was difficult being a morning reporter. When you got a job where you got to be up at 3 a.m., it's hard to go and work any shows anywhere and then kind of just find the time to do all that. So I ended up putting that sort of on hold until I moved back to California. And I was working for the ABC station out there called KESQ. And at the time, my best friend, Brandon Taylor, who wrestles under the name Robert Baines, he was working for Dave Marquez at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And he was their heritage champion. And I wanted to get back into doing wrestling. And he said, hey, why don't you just make the drive on out? We got some spots that were opening up. And at the time, Todd Kennelly, who is currently working at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, but he was moving to Impact. Like, he got the job with Impact. They might have been called TNA at the time. I don't remember. But so he was about to move up. So that spot was open. So I went there for one taping. I did a couple backstage interviews. Dave Marquez really liked me because he comes from a broadcast news background. And so we kind of gelled, and they had their red carpet rumble, and I stayed in the back and I watched how it all went. Their red carpet rumble is their version of the Royal Rumble. And then the next taping, Todd Kennelly's heading to TNA, and then I was sitting in his seat. And I just sat there and I absorbed it, and I learned so much from Dave Marquez and Johnny LaQuasto, who was in WWE for a short time as John Quasto. He's now another one of those multiple free agents that are out there, but I'm sure as soon as things kind of open up, I hope that they open the door for him and let him come back in, because Johnny's a fantastic commentator. I feel like I learned a lot sitting next to him for the number of years that I was there at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I just want the best for him, so I hope that he gets a chance to sit down and call wrestling again. So that was the evolution of my career up until the 10 Pounds of Gold series. And then you had the rebirth of the NWA. Billy bought the brand. Tim Storm's the champion, and they wanted to reboot it with this series. So the first place they went was Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, because they knew they could get television there. And so I called that first match, which if my memory serves, is Tim Storm versus a much, much heavier Zicky Dice at the time. He was a little out of shape back then. Boy, has he been able to like mold himself into this perfect character and be so strong and lean and mean and all that sort of stuff. So I called that match, and Billy and Lagana pulled me to the side, and afterwards, and I remember it very clearly in the hallway, and there's Billy Corgan. And, I was a huge fan of his music. I listened to it a lot when I was growing up in Los Angeles. There's a radio station called K-Rock, KROQ. It plays alternative music. I feel like Smashing Pumpkins was probably played every 15, 20 minutes or something. They play one of their songs. Like, it felt like it at least. And so here's this guy, and I don't know if you realize this, Billy Corgan's a tall guy. He's like 6'3", 6'4", so he towers over you. You're like, oh, why aren't you working? You know, you should be in there. And they said, we really want you to be a part of this. We want you to be the voice of this thing. We don't know what we're making yet, but we want to know if you're on board. And I said, yes. And that eventually turned into the 70th anniversary show, the Crockett Cup, and then NWA Powerrr, all the way to where we are now.
Now, real quick, I got to ask you this. Speaking of that, you talked about Dave Marquez, and I promoted that we were going to have you on in a couple of Facebook groups. Shout out to NWA Facebook groups. Dave Marquez said he's a hack. I'm like, no, he's not. He's the greatest. He's a great broadcast journalist, man. Dave Marquez is a great guy. He loves you to death,
Dave Marquez, he's always looking for heat. He's always stirring the pot. He's always doing that. And it's always coming from a good heart. And, you know, I love Dave, and he knows that, and he loves me. And it's like, you know, you're going to be rough on your brother. You know, he's picking on his little brother is what he's doing right there.
And also, I also posted on our IG page, and Mr. William Corgan hit like and commented it as well. How is it, man, working with the boss man, the big fella, like you said, 6'3", this is Smashing Pumpkins, because he is a true wrestling fan. He wasn't just a guy that had a bunch of money. He wasn't a money mark and just jumped in. Like, this guy loves wrestling. How is it working for him, man?
You know, it's one of those things that when you really start to sit down and talk to him, his knowledge of wrestling is incredible. Like, I mean, he really knows the sport, and he loves the sport, and he's super passionate about it. So you're absolutely right. It's not like he just showed up and like, I want to have this pet project where I own a wrestling company. Like, no, he's super passionate, super knowledgeable, and he has a great vision and a plan for what he wants to see in the future. And so that's what's great about working with Billy, is just his knowledge base is so incredible with it. And I have to say, he's really taken advantage of this time that we're having here where we could have no content, but to be able to come up with stuff like CarnyLand, and also all the Instagram conversations that he's having with influential people, and they're talking about really important subjects like depression and suicide, things that people are really dealing with. I mean, he's got so many layers of this guy. I mean, you know, there's the rock star layer, and, you know, I've seen him in concert now a few times, and because I've had the opportunity. It's nice when your buddy's the front man, and you could get tickets to the show. And, you know, you could see that side of him, and then you see the business side, and then you see the creative side when it comes to wrestling. And then you see just regular Billy Corgan in the back eating a salad, telling, you know, rock and roll stories from being on the road, which are fantastic. So it's like, man, like I feel like people really need to understand how important he is to this project. He's not just the owner for it. Between him and Dave Lagana and a lot of other ancillary people, but I mean, they're kind of the two tops of the pyramid, which is why the first episode of Inside the NWA, our podcast, where we do these sort of deep dive conversations, they were the first two guests right back there. And it's on right there. Which, Eddie Kingston and Homicide, there's a lot of good discussion in that episode as well. I mean, especially when we start talking about baseball. You know, those two guys, super passionate baseball fans, and there's going to be I'm sure I'm going to get some heat for some comments that were made. So if you want to go ahead and see what I had to say about the cuisine at Dodger Stadium. Oh yeah, there's going to be riots in the 323 and the 818 based on what I said. I'll tell you that much.
For sure.
I'm going to throw it out. I'm a big Howard Stern fan, and I know Billy's been on there several times, you know, and one of the things that comes up often when he's on the show is talking about, you know, pro wrestling and how he's a fan of it. So that was really cool. And then I kind of could see, you know, those early episodes where he was on Howard Stern and what's happened. Going back, you know, into your career, when you get that degree that says broadcast journalist, and I don't know if you're around in the Bobby Heenan days, right? But do you ever just smile to yourself when you say broadcast journalist, or is that just me?
It's not because, you know, for some reason it just doesn't compute in my head anymore. It just is, you know, and I say it a lot, and I go and I think somebody made the comment today that you know, being an Emmy award winning broadcast journalist has become like my gimmick. That's sort of like my catchphrase. That's my, yeah, you know, so. One, I think I need to make a shirt and have it on prowrestlingtees.com or something with and has like the Emmy logo. I'll just lean into it because you got to have a gimmick anyways, right? Everybody's got to have something. You got to make some money, especially these days. and I'm not going to make an OnlyFans page. I don't think anybody's going to want to click on that. So if I'm going to do something, I might as well sell some shirts.
I don't know what an OnlyFans page is. I don't know. Maybe,
yeah, sure you don't, bro. Sure you don't, Daryl. Oh, man. Well, Joe, you guys, because we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, the lineage of NWA. But before we go there, I want to talk about how you guys have utilized YouTube amazingly. Because I'm not going to say the names, but there's obviously other promotions, and their whole thing is TV. And I remember when Billy first announced you guys had a deal. What was it, last year? And everybody was waiting to see what was going to happen. And it comes out on YouTube. But the following is amazing. I'm a big numbers guy with this YouTube thing, and I watch the numbers. You guys are growing exponentially daily. Well, what do you attribute that to, man?
Well, I think what you have is there's a much larger audience. You have basically the entire planet as a potential audience, with some countries excluding that don't allow YouTube in their country. You have the rest of the planet that can, and a lot of people who do enjoy our product. And you've got a lot of passionate wrestling fans, you know, from Iceland to Timbuktu, South Africa. It's amazing how many fans on Twitter that follow me that are Italian, and they only speak Italian. Like, they tweet in Italian, but they still follow me and get all kinds of news updates for what's happening in San Antonio, Texas, which I'm sure they don't really care about. But and I think that's really what it allows us to get set apart from those. You know, when you get a TV deal, you're anchored to that TV deal. And I'll make a good example of this. D-Man Dan Parker, who was featured on NWA Powerrr, he is very Canadian. He is the cocky Canuck, and he's up in Canada right now. And I'll tell you what he's not watching, AEW Dynamite, because they don't have TNT up there. They don't have any of those Turner channels up there because that's an American channel. There are obviously other ways that he could try to get it, but he's not watching it over the air like anybody else can. So you have this entire continent, or this entire country of Canada, where wrestling's a big deal, you know, and they can't watch it. And so, but ours, they can, and they can watch it at any time. And I think that's the smart idea that we had with this is you have to realize how media is being consumed now. And it's not, I'm going to sit at home and at 5 o'clock, I'm going to turn on the TV and this is what I'm watching, or I'm really looking forward to at 9 o'clock watching this. I'll watch it when I want to watch it. I'll watch it when I get around to it. I'll watch it when I have time for it, because people's schedules are all different, especially now. You know, not everybody works that 9 to 5 job. Not everybody has weekends off. Not everybody has those opportunities to do that stuff. So you have to make things accessible for when people have the opportunity to watch them. And so when you put something on YouTube, yes, we do the premieres, and it really does help when people start watching it as it is going up live. And that starts to aggregate numbers, and YouTube notices that, and it gets pushed into more people's feeds. So we really do appreciate the people that do that. But on the same thing, like, somebody could watch it the next day and enjoy it just the same, you know? And we want to be able to make sure that our fans have access to this stuff. And we also want to make sure that our loyal fans have access to the best stuff. And that's why we have started this new Patreon where people can go and be a part of the CarnyLand experience. And they're going to be getting some really cool exclusive stuff. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it all works out. But we've already had an enormous response. We've had people who want to go and support it. And I think, one, they know what they're going to get. They know they're going to get something good out of it. But on the other side, they know that being a patron, for us, all that money is going to a lot of people who just can't work right now. You know, you just can't have wrestling shows. And there's so many people, you know, that between the camera guys, the sound engineers, all these people that work in entertainment, they got nothing right now. And so having the Patreon there and having that money going to a lot of the talent that you see all the time and that you enjoy all the time, but they can't work right now, you're helping putting food on people's tables. You know, you're helping support people's families. And guess what? When we come back and we're doing NWA Powerrr, and when we come back and we finally get to do the Crockett Cup, it's going to all be worth it. And just that little bit that you start feeding into that system and keeping us alive, it's going to make things so much better down the road. And I think our fans really know that. Our fans are really loyal, and they understand that the NWA has been around for more than 70 years, and we expect to be around for another 70 years. And they've gone through all kinds of problems, all kinds of issues all the time between different owners and this and that. Some guy takes the title and they shouldn't take the title and disappears, and there's all drama that goes with that stuff. Yeah. I get it. Look, it's on Wikipedia, so it must be true. So,
all right.
but they know they're gonna stick with us, and we want to make sure that when we do come back in full force, that we're gonna have the same talent or maybe more talent, and we're able to go ahead and give you the show that wrestling fans deserve.
Now, a question. We've had Mike Herman on from RetroSoft, right, with the new wrestling game and talking about that. And we've seen that, and we've seen the NWA, and that's really cool to see that studio as a part of that game that's coming out. That's one of the key things for me when I heard when they talked about bringing back the NWA, and I first saw like, oh, this is what the studio looks like. I was like, oh my God, because believe it or not, there's people who are fans of not just sports entertainment. There's actually fans of pro wrestling. I grew up in the 80s, and so I remember that set, back then, exactly the way it is today. For you, what's your wrestling journey? Like, what did you grow up watching? What did you grow up seeing? How did you really get interested in the wrestling business?
Well, I think it started, I'm a young kid, and SmackDown moved to UPN, and so it was an over-the-air station. I didn't have cable growing up. I didn't come from like an affluent family who could afford that sort of stuff. And so we had the antenna. And so that was my first instance of being able to watch television and watch professional wrestling on a television screen. I mean, and we're talking a TV that's twice as wide as it is, or twice as long as it is wide. It's an old school wood TV that we were still using at the time. And, I'd sit on the floor as my dad's falling asleep after a long day doing construction, and wrestling would come on. And that's how I first started to get into it. And then I started to have friends who were into it. So my first introduction into pro wrestling is really sort of more Attitude Era, that sort of thing like that. And it just kind of grew exponentially from there. It ebbed and flowed with things that you get interested in life. But especially my high school years, I worked, I had friends that were really, really, really into wrestling, and I was part of that group. And we did the stupid things that you're not supposed to do. We did stupid backyard stuff. Don't do that, kids. It's bad. People got hurt. It's a dumb idea. When you're old enough, go to a wrestling school in your community. I bet there's one near you that's run by someone whose name you probably know, and you can go ahead and be involved into that. And become and live the dream. You can live the dream. So that was sort of my introduction into it, is your Stone Cold Steve Austins and DX and all that, and the Big Wars and The Rock, and I mean those are all like the big guys. And when I was a kid, like I gravitated to The Undertaker and to Kane. I think I really got into anybody who had magic, anybody who had that sort of appeal with it. Like I was like really what kind of draw me into it, and the pageantry of it all. And so that's what hurts so much when you watch wrestling now, especially with the restrictions that they have when you watch those other things. All of that's just gone because you don't really have a crowd there. And sometimes they'll shoot off pyro and stuff like that. I do like pyro in the show. I'll be the first to admit, we don't do it in the NWA, and there's a whole lot of reasons why we don't. Because it's expensive and there's liability issues, and we really don't need it. But I do like it. I like that pageantry and stuff. And that's what drew me in as a child. And that's what I'd like to see today. And I can't wait for things to kind of start getting back to normal, hopefully in the next few weeks, and people can start going back to stadiums, and we can get back to having that same experience.
Well, like Daryl just stated, we have Michael Herman, creator of Retromania, who has the 10 Pounds of Gold series in the video game. We've also had C.W. Anderson, the NWA Powerrr superstar. We're going to have Tim Storm on the show. Exactly. I told him that's all he had to do was a CW hand sign. He didn't have to do anything else. We're going to have Tim Storm on the show coming up. But, I mean, you guys have a great roster. So if somebody has not watched NWA Powerrr yet, which they should have, but let's say they didn't, tell them some of the great names they should be checking out, man.
Look, I think a lot of the people that have become stars on our show, it really just goes to show the level of talent that we have and the faith that our management put into them as far as how they know to grow a character. And I think that one of the biggest examples of that, I mean, everybody is hot on women's professional wrestling right now, and I think our roster is bar none. I mean, it's number one with a bullet. And at the top of that is the NWA World's Women's Champion, Thunder Rosa. And talk about somebody who from get-go, just from Jump Street, she's coming out that curtain, and people are immediately just mesmerized by her. They see that she is a tough badass. She's going to beat you up. She's going to look intimidating doing it. And just to see her grow and evolve and then eventually become the NWA World Women's Champion. If you go ahead and you start watching NWA Powerrr starting from episode 1, you will see that arc and you will see that story, if only for that story. We have so many other ones, and they're all great too, especially our television championships when we saw, you know, the battles between Ricky Starks and Zicky Dice and all that other stuff. But Thunder Rosa and all the other women in our women's division, when we have, you know, living legends like Melina, when you've got Allison K, AK-47 out there, you know, just being tough, and they're beating the crap out of each other. And all those matches are great. And so if you like watching the women's wrestling in WWE or AEW or on Impact and you haven't watched Powerrr yet, even if you fast forward through it and that's all you're interested in, just try it. And that's something that will get you hooked. And guess what? You're going to rewind it and you're going to watch the whole show because you want to see what Eli Drake has to say, or you're going to want to see the stories that you have with Tim Storm, who's probably the best babyface working in professional wrestling today. It's kind of hard to argue that. And, you know, and you'll see what Nick Aldis does, and you'll wonder why Camille doesn't speak and all this other sort of stuff. And all these stories that we've created for it. So, and then also you got we got some stuff out there that was a complete surprise to us. We had no idea that everyone was going to love the question mark. Woo! And so we created this question mark and this man from Monrovia, and what, boy, oh boy, he just became, it was lightning in a bottle. I mean, immediate attraction from this crowd. And then you get the dichotomy with him as this great baby face that only has one word that he says, almost like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, everyone loves Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. He only says one sentence. Well, the question mark has sort of that same deal. And that, I don't know, people like that for some reason. And then you have Aaron Stevens as his tag team partner.
Whoa.
I hate vehemently.
Shooter Stevens. Okay.
Aaron Shooter Stevens.
There you
go. You can figure out what that stands for. Aaron Shooter Stevens, the third degree national champion. But just when they come out the curtain and everyone's booing Shooter Stevens, and then the question mark comes out and it erupts, and they're trading off between the cheers and the boos, but still they become this team and they can win, and it's fantastic, and it makes for really good television, and it makes for good wrestling. I mean, it makes for really good, entertaining wrestling, and that's all we want to make for people.
Karate. That's all that needs to be said.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, with that being said, you guys also got like the Rock and Roll Express. You got Trevor Murdoch. You guys, you are connecting to the history of NWA. Even though this is something brand new, you still weave that together, man. Now, how does that feel actually working with that storied history that contains Dusty Rhodes, that contains Ric Flair, that contains Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and taking it to a whole new era to these young fans that might not be totally hip to it?
You know, it really is almost surreal when you start thinking about it, and you've got guys out there like Ricky and Robert, you know, and the Rock and Roll Express, and they can still go. You know, they're in their 60s and they can still go, and they can still win, and they can still become champions and be 9-time world tag team champions. And on top of that, like, a lot of what hopefully you're gonna see when we do CarnyLand stuff is a lot of what is developed in the back with some of these guys there, and the level of knowledge that you can get from working with people who have been in the business as long as Ricky and Robert have, particularly. And if you go back, if you go back and watch our NWA 70th anniversary show, I mean, we brought out Magnum TA, we brought out all kinds of guys that were staples of NWA wrestling that still want to be part. Ivan Koloff is there, you know, the Russian Nightmare. He's coming out, and then he makes appearances on our show. And so it's all of these incredible characters that people would remember from Georgia Championship Wrestling or even Jim Crockett Productions. And to be able to kind of reflect on the past and take the best parts of it and move that into something for the future is really the goal. Because the expression, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, is very true. I mean, there are a lot of things out there that wrestling fans want and they like, and it's not too different than what was happening in 1986, you know, but we can change it and we can modernize it and we can tweak it and we can make it our own. And so when you have that actual raw materials, those raw resources there, when you can go and talk directly to guys like Ricky and Robert and try to make something interesting with some of the other younger tag teams out there, it's really fun to be able to watch that and to be able to talk about that too. Like that sometimes, you know, I'll do commentary for some other shows as well, maybe some indie promotions out there, and there isn't history. So sometimes it's hard to talk about stuff, but I've got a match and you've got these guys who have these long careers, there's so much more you get to add to that story. There's so much more you actually get to physically say with your mouth that helps paint the picture. And that's what you're doing, is you're just framing that picture for them to go ahead and do their art, which is the wrestling in the ring. And that, I think that's what makes us so successful too, is we really just lean on that history, and we know that that's a brand that people trust, and we know that it's a brand that people want to see more of.
How did you, as far as your personal style, right? So back in the day, we had Gordon Soley, which nobody touched. He's kind of straight-laced. And then we've had some more exuberant commentators and all of that. What do you think you've gained from, like, maybe you've taken from elements, and what's your style when it comes to your announcing?
Well, a lot of that was molded by Dave Marquez, and what Dave Marquez really wanted was more of a Gordon Soley type. And I think that that's what, I remember this very clearly when he told me that I was going to do commentary for him. He asked me very specifically, I want you to go home and I want you to watch a bunch of Gordon Soley clips, because that's sort of what I want from you. He didn't want me to do an impression of Gordon Soley, but he certainly didn't want me to be coming out there and being JR and using terms like slobber knocker and things like that. You know, he wanted that. And so I feel like, you know, I took that and I sort of evolved into my thing, you know, and it's hard for me not to get excited, and I'm amped up too. And that's part of, you know, me being a worker in the past, is you want to be you times 1,000. And so there's a lot of, especially when things are getting real hot and, you know, you got guys who are kicking out after getting the big finisher, but they still get it too. And you're, oh my God, how could that possibly happen? And it all comes out of you. The adrenaline really does start rushing through, and you have to kind of realize that you're working and you have to be in this thing. Cause at the end of the day, I'm a big wrestling fan. I want to just enjoy the show, you know? But as far as who I model my stuff after, I think Gordon Soley is probably the base of that pyramid. And then all the other stuff, I mean, I think it's impossible for me to say that Michael Cole hasn't had an influence on me just because I list him for so many years, or even a guy like JR or Joey Styles or any of those guys who, you know, I spent so many years hearing them talk about wrestling. But I try to present it in a professional manner. And there's certain things that we follow as, you know, gospel when it comes to doing commentary. And I have to say that, you know, the evolution that I've had and the voice that I had, I feel very confident in myself now, which is great, as opposed to your earlier years. It's just like learning to be a pilot. You got to get your 10,000 hours in the sky before you can really, you know, get that pilot's license and feel comfortable and be a professional. It goes the same way when you're doing commentary for pro wrestling. So I, you know, put in all those years at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Championship Wrestling from Arizona, and now with the NWA, and helping make that television. Because it's not just doing commentary, because it's a little bit more lax and laissez-faire if I'm just doing commentary at just a live event and the sound's getting pumped into the crowd, as opposed to something that you're making specifically for television. So those are two very different paradigms and what you can do and what you should be doing. And so being able to have that skill set is fantastic. And I really feel confident in myself now, like, especially after those first couple episodes of Powerrr, because you never really know how it's going to go. You never really know how the chemistry is going to work with your co-chair. But then you just get on a roll, and I love where I'm at, and I can't wait for us to get back to it. And I hope I don't have ring rust.
Well, I got a two-part question right here. First off, NWA has a working relationship. I don't know how close it is, but you have a working relationship with Ring of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
And Ring of Honor looks like they're softly going to start having a relationship with another three-letter organization, a bit of an elite organization. I'm not going to say it. I'll let you say it if you want to. But with that being said, is that connection with Ring of Honor going to continue? And my second question, and they're both over the board, there's been a lot of releases lately in the business. Is NWA looking to pick up any of those releases? I heard Nick Aldis talking about a couple names, but what's going on with that, man?
I think the door is always open for people who are talented and they're willing to be a part of the product. And I know that there's always been interest in our product, and there's always been people who have, tweeted about our product or have had text conversations because, in the wrestling business, it's a small family. And you start working with people who have worked and they move on to a different company and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, you still have that phone number in your phone, and you'll text your buddy and be like, yo, dog, that was dope. I like the show. Excuse me. And maybe that person doesn't have a job right now, and maybe they want to make that transition over there. I think Billy Corgan and Dave Lagana made it very clear that the door is open for a lot of folks. They're really willing to have conversations with people about the possibility of them coming on. What I did inside the NWA, Billy Corgan named one person in particular, and that was EC3. He's worked with him before at TNA, and I don't think he really got as good of a shot as he could have got in WWE with NXT. I see him, and I see the way he talks, and I see the way he works, and I see a top guy. And there's no reason why he couldn't come and have a really good angle with, the other big three-syllable guy, Eli Drake versus EC3. I mean, that's a feud that I think a lot of people would like to see. I think they'd like to see him go up against Nick Aldis for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And you never know who's going to come in. Who would have guessed Scott Steiner would have came down the steps and all that and been a part of Strictly Business? Like there's all the kinds of we always have surprises. As far as the relationship with Ring of Honor, I haven't had a lot of discussions with our management about that, but I feel like that relationship's been very healthy, and we've been very beneficial for each other for a long time. Going back to the Crockett Cup and the big match between Marty Scurll and Nick Aldis. And I'll tell you one thing, Marty Scurll wants to be the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He wants that championship. And he wasn't able to get it at the Crockett Cup, but that doesn't mean he's ever going to stop trying to get it. And that was going to be our main event match at the Crockett Cup. Well, probably semi-main after the actual cup match, but still, that was going to be one of the big matches out there. That was going to be the big draw. And I don't think any of it's changed as to what Marty Scurll wants to have in his career. And I feel like if, the folks that are watching this, they happen to read a lot of different periodicals about professional wrestling that I won't call dirt sheets, but let's call them dirt sheets. They know how much pull Marty has at Ring of Honor. And so I feel like if Marty wants to do something, he's going to get an opportunity to do it. And I would like to see that relationship sort of continue selfishly, just because of the fact that if you look at Ring of Honor, what an amazing roster of guys that they have that we could use as part of our show, and we could kind of intermingle a bit. And on top of that, if it gives me an opportunity, I've had a couple of chances to call matches with Ian Riccaboni, and I tell you what a fantastic broadcaster he is in his own right. And I love calling matches with Ian as well. So that's always fun. And to possibly have that opportunity in the future, I'd love to have that. So, I can't say anything for sure, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me if we had some sort of, relationship, whether it's going to be an invasion sort of relationship or a friendly sort of relationship. I would expect to be, to see some familiar faces on either one of those shows.
A question, because you mentioned Scott Steiner, and it came to mind.
Big Papa Pump.
Did he bring his freaks? Number one. Well, two questions. Number one, did he bring his freaks? And two, What's a mark out moment for you? Like when you're in the locker room or you're doing an announcing and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sitting here next to X.
Well, I have to tell you, like just having Scott Steiner when that siren went off and he came out on top of the stairs, I did totally marked out there. Even though I'd already seen him backstage and like shook his hand and talked to him and all the other stuff, still in that moment, that magical moment when that happens, it's like, whoa, that's crazy, dog. So that's probably one of the top ones that I've had as far as mark out moments on NWA Powerrr. And then also my mark out moment when I first saw Billy Corgan at the Ocean View Pavilion where we filmed Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, however many years ago that was, you know, just to see this rock icon, who we were all given very strict instructions. Please do not bother Mr. Corgan. Don't go up and ask for selfies with Mr. Corgan. Keep your distance. He's here for a business reason. And so it was like, oh, dude. So that added more mystery to it just because they told me not to go up and shake his hand, but I kind of want to go up and shake his hand. And sort of like, and then you see him there. It's like, oh, dude. And to think that I'm working for that guy now is like, it's crazy. It's almost surreal. So, you know, like that's probably you know, and then there's so much that I pop for because I literally just pop for so much, you know, that we make and all of our content and all of our guys are great. And, you know, you've got so many great stars that whether they came in as stars or they became stars as this new version of the NWA. I mean, it's been a wild ride and I can't wait for it to keep going.
You didn't answer the question about the freaks. Did he bring the freak?
Well, of course he did. I think he's got like an 18-wheeler that just follows him wherever he goes. He's in the Corvette in front, and there's an 18-wheeler following behind. I think that's pretty much how he has to roll these days.
Man. Hey, okay. Well, just to make sure, I want to make sure our listeners caught this. So you guys weren't able to do the Crockett Cup because that's when the pandemic happened. But we are going to get the Crockett Cup, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think nothing's 100% in this world, especially in the times that we have. But I don't see any way that we have brought back this incredible tournament into existence, and this particular pandemic removes that from a possibility in the future. We're all very excited about it. We know the fans want it. We have all the foundation built for all of this build that we had going into it, for all of the shows that we built to have the Crockett Cup. So nothing is 100% certain in this world, and certainly nothing's 100% certain in professional wrestling. But if I was a betting man, I'd put money that we will be having the Crockett Cup, and it'll be sooner rather than later.
Okay, cool. Now, we're not going to hold up too much more of your time, but I do got one more question. You guys started 605, which is historical when it reverts back to NWA. Mm-hmm. And you guys do the studio audience. How does that feel being in the studio audience as opposed to an arena? Even though obviously you guys were planning on doing an arena for Crockett Cup. But right. How does that feel, man, that energy there with that studio audience? You
know, you would think, if you just kind of look at the numbers, you would think that there would be less electricity in the studio environment as opposed to just because the numbers are different. If we were in the Gateway Arena in Atlanta and we had 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people, you would think that there would be a cacophony of noise and it would be different. But the way that it's formatted and the way that we have our audience and the audience that shows up, it's very equal. It is very equal, the amount of energy that we get from these people. And that's what I love about doing it. You know, in my experience in studio wrestling, it doesn't start on NWA Powerrr. It started on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, which in all intents and purposes is a studio wrestling show. And if your viewers want to see it, they're still putting out content. They have 500 hours of shows that they can go ahead and access. So if they have access to Fight TV, you can go and you can watch Championship Wrestling from Hollywood anywhere at any time. You could also watch Championship Wrestling from Arizona, where I used to work. And they're both fantastic shows. You know, one's more of a theater style show because we have it in a nightclub. But as far as studio wrestling goes, and as far as NWA Powerrr goes, and the Hard Times pay-per-view goes, the people that come out to enjoy those shows, and they spent those money on tickets, and they came from all over the world, and they sit in those 250 to 300 seats that they have there, they are giving it their all, and they are loving every second of it, and you can tell. You could tell that they're such an important part of our show, and it's just the interactions that they have. When Dave Marquez is interviewing someone at the podium, and they're screaming stuff out, and Eli Drake reacts to it, or Tim Storm reacts to it, or Tom Latimer reacts to it. You know, it's there, and they're part of it, and they're really the lifeblood of it. And you want to have that in wrestling. And so I will tell you this, I don't see us going the route to where we would have shows in front of nobody. I don't see us doing that in the NWA. Like I said, anything's possible, and, you know, things could change, and Billy and David can make different decisions. I know a lot of folks out there, especially those who are the people who are wrestlers, you know, they think, well, this is my livelihood. If I can wrestle, I'm gonna wrestle so I can put food on the table. And you have to respect that. You have to respect that 100%. And the work that they're doing in that ring is still exceptional. I mean, if you go and you watch our past WrestleMania and there's nobody there and they do it over 2 nights, the wrestling is very good. It's very good wrestling that's there. It's just different and not having that active audience experience. And with NWA and with Powerrr and with the fans that would have came out for the Crockett Cup and that will come out hopefully when we have the Crockett Cup, I know that they're going to be electric, and there is that energy there, and you're able to feed off that energy. And, you know, I have done shows, not with the NWA, but with other promotions. You know, you go there and not too many people show up, and they're not too excited to be there. And there's a definite difference. There's a vacuum at that point. Whereas when you have the cacophony of noise and you have people who are passionate about one person and passionate that they hate another person, it really makes a big difference. And so, you know, it's one of those things where we got to wait and see exactly when we're going to be able to go forward with it. But at some point we will. Things have to return back to normal. They have to get back to the way that they were. We have to go back to living our lives. And my life is with the NWA.
Love it. Daryl, do you got anything else for him before we get out of here?
Yeah, well, no, I'll end it with this. So we always want to talk about what's next. You know, we obviously the Crockett Cup, we know stuff's kind of in limbo. What about other projects, though, like toys, merchandise, right? Toys, games, anything like that in the works that you want to talk about?
Well, if you want to go to nationalwrestlingalliance.com/shop, you'll see all of our great merchandise. Once again, all of the funds from that go to help support those wrestlers that you love that aren't able to work right now. But it's mostly shirts and garments and pins and things like that. I mean, those the little pins with the championship title belts, those sell like hotcakes. Everybody loves those. And so I see us constantly making those, and even going back to some of the older designs. You know, I'm very proud of the Dan Severn NWA World Heavyweight Championship pin that I have that's like this big. That, you know, it's the one time the belt looked like that, and we made that pin in a limited release, and we'll probably make more of them soon. So as far as that merchandise goes, and, you know, you got Retromania that's coming out with all that stuff as far as a video game goes. So you'll be able to interact in that space, in the GPB studio space, which I think is super cool. And then other stuff, we also rely a lot on the talent themselves. So you've got all these great designs for T-shirts. I mean, Zicky Dice makes his T-shirts. Those are all come out of his brain. So if you're going to get any sort of that sort of stuff, it's going to come from those people. And then Thunder Rosa has her own set of merchandise that's fantastic and stuff like that. So as far as that stuff goes, and you know what, if anybody wants to make a action figure of me, I'll take it. You know, have a little microphone, that'd be fine.
Nice.
Put me at a little booth there, that'd be good. And there are some fans out there that make like fan art. Like, it's obviously not for sale, but they make little fan art. Like, here's and it's adorable, and I appreciate it a lot. And I never thought I'd be in a position to where somebody would make an action figure of me, but someone did, and they sent it to me on Instagram, a picture of it on Instagram, and I was super flattered. I was super flattered that they would make something like that. So if we got more stuff coming down the line, you'll certainly see it and hear about it on CarnyLand, especially for the folks that become patrons, and they get everything early. If you're a patron of CarnyLand, you're going to get it hours and hours before everybody else, and you'll be able to talk about it to all your friends way before they get an opportunity to see it. And once again, it just helps us out in this time of crisis, and then really everybody needs a helping hand.
For sure, man. Well, I'll tell you, first of all, thank you for coming to the show, man. We done had a great time. I will say this, though. Before we close out, I only have one problem with the NWA. I love it to death. I've been a fan since day one. My only problem, and I understand licensing and everything, that you guys changed Into the Fire as the theme song. Oh, I loved Into the Fire, man. But you had to do what you had to do. I understand.
The licensing issue is neither here nor there. I think what you need to remember is we're doing something very different, and I wouldn't surprise me if every season comes with a different theme. And when we come back from this crisis, you're going to see another theme, because there's a reason behind it, and it's part of the story that we're telling. I will admit, Into the Fire is a fantastic song, and it's on my workout playlist, and I hear it every time I'm clanging and banging in the gym, or at least when I'm back to able to do that. So, you know, and I agree. And that was probably one of the biggest pushbacks we got, is when we changed that song. But that was a conscious decision that came from the higher ups that, no, we're telling a new story. This is something new that's going on. We're not going into the fire because we are. That story was about us trying something new and becoming something new, but then we already existed. So we're into the fire now. So that's why we had to change things up. You know what? And, you know, Billy Corgan's a rock star. I don't know why he doesn't use one of his songs. Kind of like, right? Doesn't that kind of make sense? Like,
you heard that, Billy. You heard what he said.
He's got 9,000 songs that he's recorded, and he doesn't want to use any of them as the theme for his wrestling program. Isn't that weird?
Because he wants it to be NWA, not the Smashing
Pumpkins. I don't know. You know, I don't know. It's just, to me, it seems like that's a real missed opportunity. Like, you already have songs, Billy. What are you doing looking at other people's songs?
For sure.
That's my 2 cents.
Well, Joe, again, thank you for coming on the show, man. We had a great time talking about you, talking about NWA Powerrr. We're telling everybody watching, I've been a fan since day one. But right now, this segment is called Ring the Bell. Ring the Bell is where we give the guests 60 seconds to talk about anything. You can promote, you can inspire people, whatever you want to do. You can tell them to come watch your OnlyFans page if you want to. Whatever you want to do, yep, take a drink. You got 60 seconds. Joe, ring the bell.
I think during these times that we have right now, I really want to appreciate everybody who has taken a moment to listen to this and to hear me talk about the thing that I'm most passionate about in the world, and that is professional wrestling. And we know that everyone else is passionate about a lot of things that they don't have access to right now, that they just can't do, that they're struggling. They're not able to put food on the table or pay rent. And we know everybody out there is doing everything that they can as best that they can. And I just want people to know out there that we love and we support you, and you are loved, and people care about you, and we're going to get through this. And whether that means you need to take a little bit of help to all the programs that are available throughout either your city or through the federal government, go out there and do that research, start Googling stuff. If you're unable to pay for things, there's all kinds of unemployment benefits. There's food banks out there that are there to help you out. There is so much stigma out there when it comes to mental illness and the depression and the things that people are going through right now. I want to let people know that you're not alone, that people are there for you, and the things that you love will come back. So you have to just persevere and make it your way through this. And if you need a hand, stick your hand out and someone will help pull you and pick you up, and we will get through all of this together. And then at the end of the day, once we are all together, we can sit down and watch the NWA, watch some wrestling, and really just come together as the country that we are, as the planet that we are. Because the whole planet's suffering, but it's not going to suffer forever. And we're going to get through this one person at a time, one day at a time, and then this will all be behind us.
Man, appreciate that. Salute to you for those amazing words, man. And that's real. One more time, let them know about how they can watch CarnyLand. And real quick, before we get out of here.
Oh, hey, you know what? Follow us on YouTube at NWA, or at youtube.com/NWA for YouTube. Twitter is always going to be like our main way of getting things out there. So we want to make sure that you follow NWA on Twitter and also follow CarnyLand on Twitter. So at CarnyLand and also at Girl Power. That's our new show that's going to be starting on Friday with all of our female talent that we have as well. So follow those. You can follow me at Joe Galli News on Twitter, and then just my name, Joe Galli, on Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and OnlyFans. But you got to pay for that one. You got to pay for that one.
Get your money, man. Get your money, man. All right, Joe. Thanks a lot. Oh, and tell Marty Bell I said hi. Just say it. Tell her I said hi. All right. Thank you very much, Joe. Take care, bro.
Peace and love, man. Appreciate it. This was
sir.
fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Been a great guest.
Make sure you tag me when you post all this stuff, and I'll retweet it, and we'll do all that jazz. All right, man?
Definitely, brother.
Thanks. Have a good one, guys.
Yeah.
You.
Daryl, another great show, man.
Another great show, man. I love it. I love it. I love the NWA, you know, old school. So the way they brought it back and being a part of that it's been exciting for me as a viewer and as a fan. So, and then they've been doing a great job. I mean, when you see The Rock, and he probably had to get some heat for it, right? When The Rock comes out and says, man, this is a fantastic show. I mean,
right.
What better compliment is that? So, yeah, no, it's really exciting. And like I said, they had so much momentum to kind of hit the snag here with as we all have with the pandemic. But I know, you know, with the minds and ideas churning, when we get out of this, they're gonna be, you know, on fire. So happy to see it.
They're gonna be. Well, he said I can't say into the fire because that was the first season. But yeah, but he's right though, man. Like I said, I when they first said they were coming back, I didn't know what to expect. Then they said they were on YouTube. I'm like, okay. But I'm gonna tell you, I've been a fan since day one. I've watched every single episode, the pay-per-views and everything, man. So shout out to everybody out there in the NWA. Tim Storm, like I said, we're gonna have him on in the show also. Zicky Dice, everybody, shout out to them, man. And to all the listeners and viewers, man, I want to thank you guys for your support. I've been looking at our numbers. Our numbers are definitely going up. Glad you guys are enjoying the shows that we're doing. You know what to do. Follow us on Instagram at The Whip Show Podcast. Facebook, The Whip Show Podcast. YouTube, The Whip Show Podcast. If you got a guest you want us to bring on the show, The Whip Show Podcast at gmail.com. Holler at us. If you want to be a sponsor of this show, hit us up as well. We'll shout you out. We'll take care of you. Check us out. But we'll be back for another episode next time. So you know what it is. You got this Sean, Whip Dog Whipple, and
devastating Daryl Pace. And by the way, if you're Scott Steiner's freaks, come on to us too. You know, use those emails. Get out there. We'd love to have Scott Steiner's freaks on the show.
Hey, holler if you hear him. Holler if you hear him. All right, man. We will see you next time on the Wrestling Heroes and Insiders Podcast, a.k.a. The Whip Show. Take care, guys.